Welcome. Here we are at the Silvers Connection. I am Ernie Silvers, your host. Today I am with Bruce Tulgan. Bruce is founder and chairman of Rainmaker Thinking, which is an amazing name for a company. Best-selling author, speaker, whose clients include Aetna, Walmart, and the U.S. Army. He's written a book, and we're going to talk about this book today called The Art of Being Indispensable. I think that's amazingly important, especially now. So Bruce, welcome to the Silvers Connection.
Oh, hey, thank you so much for including me. It's an honor and a privilege to be on with you.
I love it. Thank you, thank you, thank you. You had a quote in your book that you didn't know that the art of being indispensable would be like the how to win friends and influence people. That's an amazing thought. Can you expand on that for me? What did you mean by that?
Yeah, I mean, I did want to emulate how to win friends and influence people. What I didn't realize is that it would be such a good fit for the COVID environment. You know, I wrote the book before the COVID pandemic happened. And the reason I wrote the book is because so many people I would talk with were saying, you know, I want to be indispensable. I want to be that go-to person. I want to be successful. But how do I do that without making myself hopelessly overcommitted? Yeah. And you know, and because look, if you want to be that super valuable go-to person, that indispensable go-to person, it's very tempting to say yes whenever somebody asks you for something. And it's very hard to say no. You have this fear that if you say no, well, you know, maybe someone else will do it, or maybe they'll think I have a bad attitude, or maybe it won't get done. Yeah. And so if you have a good attitude, if you're good at what you do, if you're hardworking, you want to say yes. But what we found, and this was before the pandemic, was that today's workplace is so uncertain. It's constantly changing. It's more and more pressure, and lines of authority are increasingly unclear. And in this environment, what we found was that people who were trying so hard to be valuable, they were shooting themselves in the foot because they were making themselves overcommitted. And if you make yourself overcommitted, you sort of doom yourself to making yourself not reliable.
Not reliable, not valuable. I'm going to use that as a segue because your first chapter talks about fighting overcommitment, and you're absolutely right. We do feel some sort of implied pressure that we must say yes every time we're asked. So how do we fight overcommitment and that everything is my job syndrome that you discuss? How do we do that?
Yeah, well, you have to start with the realization that you can't do everything for everybody. So if you really, you know, and it sounds so obvious,
right?
But if you really get that, I mean, look, this book is like all my other books. It's a back to fundamentals book. Like all my other books, you know, what I have found in our research is the more I try to figure out how people can succeed in this rapidly changing, globalized, high-tech, uncertain world, is to get back to basics.
Yeah.
You know, and if you really want to be valuable, you got to be honest with yourself, and you got to be honest with other people. You got to make good decisions. You got to tune into, okay, how can I add value best? And the worst thing you can do, it turns out, if you're great at your job, if you're hardworking, if you have a great attitude, then 9 out of 10 people who fall down, nonetheless, do so because they're drowning in overcommitment. And so what that means is, you know, you've got to focus on real influence thinking, which is people will remember you and know you for what you do, not for what you promise. And you know, what you do for people, how you deliver for people, that's what they're going to remember. And that means, you know, and also, you know, sometimes people who think about false influence, you know, that, whoa, I don't have authority, so I got to be a steamroller, or I'm gonna do it all, and then, you know, better to ask for forgiveness than to ask for permission, and
Oh my
you know,
goodness.
I'm gonna pursue my agenda no matter what, and then, you know, and then they find themselves over promising, and then they're juggling, and if you're juggling, you're bound to drop the ball, and so people, no matter how hard they're, you know, they're trying really hard, and yet they get a reputation for being somebody who doesn't deliver. And that's the opposite of real influence.
Yeah, they tend to think they need to do everything themselves. They don't delegate well. Learning to delegate is a huge art. I mean, it's okay if you say yes to some things, but you can't do it all yourself. You need to learn to delegate. You need people to assist you. So I think that's important. And you talked about this for just a quick minute. I'm going to ask you to expand on it. Lead from wherever you are. You said, talk about people don't think they have authority. I have no power. I don't have an authority, but that's not always true. You can be an influencer regardless of your position. Is that fair?
Yeah, and again, when I talk about influence, you know, some people think about influence. What they mean is getting other people to do their bidding, regardless of their authority, right? And so if you start thinking that way, how can I get people to do what I want and need, even though I don't have authority? I could badger them. I can bake brownies. You know, I can trade quid pro quo. I can threaten to withhold my support. I can be mean to them. You know,
politics.
Exactly. And you know, you can get so far that way, but real influence comes from knowing how you can add the most value in any situation. And so the chapter Lead from Wherever You Are, what that's really about is, you know, so many people would say to me, well, I don't have authority, so here's what I do, right? I just do it anyway. And you know, and hope that I won't get in trouble, or, you know, I just push my agenda, even if I don't have the authority, or, you know, you know, one leader said to me, you know, our approach was proceed until apprehended. And so that's one way of leading from wherever you are. Just, you know, use your charisma and your voice and your persuasiveness. What I mean, or what our research found, was that the most successful people are the ones who orient themselves where they are. And the first thing they do is understand the context of the power relations in which they're operating. And that if you have a lot of people to deal with where the lines of authority are not clear, right? So sideways and diagonal relationships, colleagues, who are relying on you, colleagues upon whom you're relying, where you're not in a chain of command directly. Right. That what we found was the most effective people by far, the first thing they do is get really clear about where they are in the chain of command, and then align themselves vertically before they try to go sideways. So to your point, you know, in terms of delegation, they align themselves with their boss. They get, so in other words, what you're doing is helping your boss delegate the right amount of authority and responsibility to you, right? So they go to their boss and they get really clear ground rules, really clear priorities, really clear marching orders, so that they know 9 times out of 10 what their boss would say in response to an open question. And then, to your point about delegation, if they have direct reports, they make sure that their direct reports have really clear ground rules, really clear priorities, really clear marching orders. And then they're anchored in the chain of command. So when they go deal with their colleagues sideways and diagonal, they're in a much stronger position. And there, you know, if you don't have authority, leadership is about using clear communication to align on expectations, to align on next steps, to align on plans. So, you know, my rule is first person you should manage every day is yourself. Second person you should manage every day is your boss. Third person is anyone who reports to you. And then see how much time you've got, because that's going to take a lot of your time. You know?
It is. Yeah, so it's about really, if I understand you correctly, it's understanding what's expected of you, having your direct reports understand and be comfortable with what's expected from them. And sometimes understanding, like you say, understanding your position in the organization, you're comfortable in your own skin or in your own position and you're free to move, right? You don't have this guess of what do I do or who do I report to? So
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And what, you know, where that came from. So I wrote a book called It's Okay to Be the Boss. And I wrote a book called The 27 Challenges Managers Face. And I wrote a book called It's Okay to Be the Boss,
yeah,
and be the boss, manage your boss. And, you know, that's all about vertical alignment. Okay.
communication. Yeah,
Yeah, but it's all about chain of command, vertical alignment. Okay. And in which authority relationships are clear. Really why I wrote the book, The Art of Being Indispensable, is because what people were telling me is, man, I deal with so many people where the lines of authority are not clear. And then there are all these theories about, well, what do you do if the lines of authority are not clear? Use influence. And people are like, what does that mean? Badger
yeah.
people, bake brownies? And then people say, well, proceed until apprehended. And I said, well, what does that mean? It sounds like, you know, do that even though you don't even though you don't have permission. It doesn't sound like a good idea to me.
Business
And
is war.
yeah, so when we really started to look at, well, who are the people who handle those lateral relationships best?
Right.
And their step one was that they were just so vertically aligned. Vertical alignment comes first.
Okay. So let me ask a question, kind of expand on this a little bit with alignment. Um, we've been in COVID for about a year now, the COVID shutdown, lockdowns in various forms and fashions. I know that at Cal State, we've been virtual for, this is going into year 2. How has the COVID environment has the COVID environment changed that aligning of authority and responsibility?
Yeah, I mean, look, some people are thriving on working from home. They're thriving on the convenience, the
Right.
flexibility, the comfort, the lack of commuting. You know, everyone's got hours back. And by the way, business leaders are saying, turns out a lot more can get done remotely than we thought.
Isn't that amazing?
And it turns out maybe we could save a lot on commercial real estate. And it turns out we could save a lot on travel. And hey, that commute time you're saving, I'll split it with you. You know, you
Yeah.
get half of it, I'll take some extra work. Right. So there's a lot that's going well. Not only that, but without the crutch of place and time. Oh, there's a body over there during certain hours.
Right.
A lot of people have been forced to focus on real performance measures, concrete actions,
Mm-hmm.
real outcomes. And without the crutch of having somebody right over there to have sort of random ad hoc communication, it's putting a lot more structure into communication.
Mm-hmm.
And more structure leads to more substance. So there's a lot about it that's really, really good.
Yeah.
But I think also people are realizing there's a lot that's missing. And you know, human beings are wired to be together. The technological enablement is sort of ahead of our evolution and our brains and our hearts. And you know, my running joke with business leaders is, okay, so on Zoom, you're missing some visual data, you're missing some auditory data,
Right.
but you can't smell, taste, or touch people at all. And of course, you shouldn't smell, touch, or taste people at work. But that sensory data is real. It's real to what humans are and how we are, how we operate.
Yeah.
And you know, what's really missing is spontaneous interaction, noticing. One of the things that I've learned, you know, one of the things I do is I go to workplaces and just, you know, follow people around while they're working, which is a lot better than working. But one of the things I've learned is, you know, of course I'm noticing a lot, but people notice each other.
Right.
And when they notice each other doing stuff, you know, they didn't mean to notice. It's spontaneous, and that leads to certain kinds of conversations. It leads to some kind of serendipitous brainstorming. It also, there's research on, the propinquity factor, that apparently when you're around each other, it has an effect on enthusiasm, on effort, and on creativity. So these are some of the things that are missing. And what I think is, I don't think we're ever going to go back to a full in-person anything, because people have just realized there's too much convenience, flexibility, and comfort, and saved time. And, people, you're in California, right?
Yes, sir.
So, you're also not burning as much carbon, which is good. I'm an environmentalist, I don't want to burn carbon, and my carbon footprint's a heck of a lot lower, since I'm not taking 50 flights a month, but there is something missing, and we've got to the folks who are going to really take advantage of this transformation are going to be the ones who also figure out how to fill that proximity gap.
Right. So I think one of the impacts of COVID, directly or indirectly, is how we treat each other as people. Even when we do go out, we do so much of the Zoom thing, and you're right. There's that spontaneity, the vibe we get from one another, the energy that we share with one another. That's not quite there on Zoom. And we tend to treat each other a little bit differently now in public, because we've got the little face diaper thing going on, but
yeah. That's so true. That's such a good point. That's a great term too. That's the first I've heard that.
Yeah. It's not, it's not really attractive, but that's kind of what it feels like. We discussed briefly prior to coming on about the mental wellness aspect. So taking all these things into consideration, how do we, first of all, is the mental wellness impact, is that a real factor according to you?
I mean, from all of our research, you would think it would be. And from our research over the last 11 months, it certainly is. It's affecting some people more than others. Yeah. Some people are in denial about how much it's affecting them. So they're struggling with depression, but it's not because of this, and
I'm fine. I'm just perfectly fine. Yeah, but we're
exactly. I'm not defensive. You're defensive. And to the extent that depression is one of the manifestations of this, people do have unrealistic ideation when they're depressed. So I'm told by my friends who are psychologists. But that's why my advice under any circumstances is the first person you have to manage every day is yourself. But I think you got to do some well-being, checks, and it's mind, body, spirit. You got to take care of your body. Yeah. And you got to take care of your mind, and you got to take care of your spirit, so you can bring your best self to work. And it's one of the reasons why you have to fight over commitment, because when people allow themselves to become overcommitted, they start drowning in other people's competing priorities.
Yep.
They start to suffer from siege mentality. They start to see every interaction as a burden. They turn into porcupines, get away from me.
Don't touch me.
And so, the irony is that when you try to say yes to everyone and everything to please, pretty soon you find yourself saying no to everyone and everything just because you need, get away from me.
Get off of me.
And that siege mentality was vexing people, before the COVID pandemic.
Right.
I think now it's worse. And one of the data points that I'm interested in is, to your point about people treat each other differently, there seems to be an infection of kind of internet norms on civility. Yeah. And, it turns out, as I read a piece yesterday that was some reporting on this, where, people, if you don't have to sit next to somebody all day, right? It gives you more license to treat them in a way that's less regarding of them as a person. Ooh. If you know somebody's going to be sitting next to you all day, you're a little more careful with how you interact with them. And so, I think it's really important that, we got to take care of culture in this environment.
Agreed.
And culture to me is not, do you have a ping pong table or a pool table in the office? Do you have couches, or, what kind of snacks do you bring in? And, do we have cocktails together on Friday? I mean, to me, that's just a minefield if you have cocktails together on Friday evening. But to me, the way to build culture is to keep reminding people of our shared mission, our shared roles in relation to the mission, how we depend on each other, how we show up for each other, how we deliver for each other. In many ways, The Art of Being Indispensable at Work, the book, the reason I wrote it is because what I wanted to tell people is it's not about doing everything for everybody. It's about how you show up and how you do what you do for people, and really tuning into other people's needs and your role in relation to their need. What is it that you're great at? What are you a specialist at? And if it's something that, that's not, I'm not a specialist at that, or what is something that's not my job. Well, okay, maybe it should be, and then get really good at it. And then how do you focus and execute for people? And how do you take care of the relationships around the shared mission? I think the future of culture is going to be all about mission, all about shared interdependent relationships, all about how we show up for each other, all about how we respect each other's needs, and all about how we deliver for each other, and how we keep getting better together. And so people say, oh, well, is it all about making friends with people at work? Is it all about workplace politics? My view is that you got to make sure that the work goes right. The better the work goes, the better the relationships are going to go, the better everyone's going to feel.
We need results. You have to have results, but I think we have to take care of one another. One of the things that the face covering has eliminated is the instant icebreaker of a smile. We would see each other and you would smile, and bang, all of a sudden the ice is broken and now we can communicate, and there's that human contact, and the face covering completely takes that away. So we forget, that's how we forget we're human, for crying out loud.
Right.
We become things or objects. I want to get into something that's a challenge for me and a lot of the folks I know. I guess I know too many crazy people like me. When to say no and when to say yes. And we do tend to say yes more than we say no, but when do we say no? How do we know? How do we form that?
Well, again, saying no. So one of the things that I was trying to explore there is I heard from so many people that, we're overcommitted, we're in siege mentality, we've got to learn how to say no.
Right.
And I thought about that a lot. And I think that's a little bit like false influence, like getting what you need by badgering people, that how to say no. Like if you could only say it just right and sugarcoat it, then everything would be fine. No, it's still no. And so
it's clear.
and what I learned was that the people who had the most power to say no, the people who were getting more and more decision-making power and who were respected by their peers to say no, were the people who had a track record of making really good decisions about yes and no. And people who, they show their work, like a math class, they show their work. So they're the people who make the best decisions are also the people who slow down when a request is being made. That at first I thought it was all about yes and no. And what I realized looking at the research was, no, it's all about the ask. It's all about the request, that we gloss over the request, the ask. So often people who ask, they don't really understand what you do and how you do it. They might not understand exactly what they need. They know they have a need, but we gloss over the ask, and it's either yes, because I want to please and I want to be a hero, or it's no, because I'm drowning in overcommitment. Neither of those is a good reason to say yes or no. That's not a good basis of decision making. Right? The right way to make a decision is based on really understanding the ask and where your expertise and your productive capacity aligns with that need. And so the technique that we're teaching based on the best practices we identified were, first, slow down at the point of the ask. Pay attention to the ask, respect the ask questions of the ask, take notes, ask really good questions and take notes. Sometimes you have to fine tune the ask the person to go back and fine tune their ask. Now, and take notes, pay attention, take notes. And what this does, do an intake memo, right? And so what this does is it shows somebody that you're respecting their need,
Mhm.
It shows somebody how you make your decisions. And it shows somebody that you're methodical and that you're not just jumping to a yes or no.
Mhm.
So this alone gives you more power. And it also puts you in a much better position to make a decision about whether
Right.
this is something you can do. And if it is something you can do and you're allowed to do and you should do, it puts you in a much better position to make a plan so that you say yes in the right way. Yes, and a plan, right? Yes is not the end of it. It's yes and a plan, right? Yes is just the beginning, right?
Yeah.
You say
Yeah.
yes, you need a plan and you need time to execute. So, but it puts you also in a position of if you say no, you say, no, I can't do that, but I know someone who can. Or no, I'm not allowed to do that. And you know what? I don't think you are either. Maybe you shouldn't do that. I don't think either one of us is allowed to do that. We're not allowed to do that, right? So I think what you mean is X, Y, Z. How about go back and reframe that? Or if it's an ROI question, a return on investment question, if it's a should I do that?
Mhm.
Then it's a matter of, okay, is this something I'm a specialist at? I can do it very well, very fast. I know just what to do. I have repeatable solutions. I have job aids. I know just how to get this done for you. And I can tell you, okay, next Thursday, it'll take me 3 hours to get this done, right? Oh, I need it right now. Well, next Thursday, I can do it in 3 hours, right? And that also tells somebody, oh, the way you organize your time is methodical.
Right.
The way you organize priorities is methodical.
Mhm.
And so the more you slow down and understand the need, take it apart, you also put yourself in a position to help that person help you help them,
Right.
right? So you say, oh, okay. So between now and next Thursday, if you do A, B, and C, that'll really help me deliver for you.
Mhm.
And so it's when to say no. I can't do it. I'm not allowed to do it. I really shouldn't do it. That's when to say no. And how to say yes is to have understood the need sufficiently well that you can say yes, and now let's make a plan.
Right. So it sounds like you're kind of slowing the game down a little bit. Oftentimes people approach us and they don't really know what to do either. They just want you to take it. They just want you to fix it. And so if I
Exactly.
understand you right, you're kind of like, wait, let's go slow here and let's figure out exactly what is it you want and if I can help you and how I might help you or how someone else might help you or no, I can't help you. But you become more of an asset and a real a value add if you can help the person understand what they're really after, because sometimes they don't know.
Yeah, exactly. So that's exactly what I mean when I say add value in every
Right.
conversation, in every word you say, every move you make. Start adding value at the point of the ask. I mean, so often these asks come, okay, if you have cocktails on Friday, it's on a cocktail napkin, right?
Yeah.
If back in the old days, we used to go to taverns and so on. And then
Yeah. Once upon a time.
yeah. And, but if it's at a meeting, it might be, crosstalk. Hey, can you do this? If it's at a Zoom meeting, it might be a text that comes in. Hey, can you take that?
Right.
Well, take what? So to slow down, take notes, and absolutely that start adding value in that conversation right there and then.
I think that's hugely valuable. Thank you for that, Professor. I appreciate
Oh,
that.
thank you. Remember, I'm a wannabe.
That's amazing, though. And so many of us have challenges with that. And I think you're right. If you can, instead of defending it like a fiery dart being thrown at you, if you can handle it professionally, I think that makes you absolutely a go-to person because you just don't deflect or take on too much.
Yeah,
Final.
and let me just say one more thing about that, because I think people need to recognize
Mhm.
their good attitude and their desire to add value so often leads to a sloppy yes.
Yeah.
And it's overcommitment that leads to a sloppy no.
Mm.
So slow down, no matter how busy you are at the moment, slow down. Even if you're overcommitted, slow down. Maybe this is something for next month. If you've got plenty of productive capacity, slow down. Don't waste your yeses.
Yeah. 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 That's amazing. Let's finish up with go-to-ism. What is go-to-ism other than a cool phrase? What is go-to-ism?
Yeah, so I wanted to call the book Gotoism. My first idea for the book was Gotoism because when I went to find people
Mhm.
who were beating over commitment syndrome, but who were, you know, it was like the individual contributor version of the 1-minute manager, the
Mhm.
person who always seemed to have their act together. They weren't drowning, they weren't suffocating. Everyone respected them. You say, who's your go? Oh, I'll go. I always go to that person. Well, they're not always available, but they always know just what to say. They always know how to help me help myself. They
Right.
always know, you know, so when I started, and one of the questions I ask when I go into an organization to do a talent assessment is, hey, who are your go-to people?
Right.
And when I start talking through, and of course, part of what I'm trying to find out is, and who are your not go-to people? You know?
Right. Because we know those as well. Yeah.
Oh yeah. And a big part of what I'm usually being hired to find out is who are your not go-to people. But I want to find the go-to people, you know. And so when I first started realizing what it was, you know, I say, oh, you know, go-to people are the ones who they're playing a long game. They're playing a long game of reputation and influence, of being someone who has that reputation for they never overpromise, they always deliver, they ask the right questions, they know all the people, you know, they know who's who in the zoo, I like to say.
Yeah.
And so, you know, and they have their go-to people. And their whole approach with their go-to people is to make themselves a really good customer, to go with a really well fine-tuned ask, to help the person help them, to go to the right person about the right thing, right? And so you know, so I started saying it's go-to-ism, right? You're a go-to person, people go to you, you go to them. It's go-to-ism. And then when I often will say, if I have an audience, if you don't know about this, there's a pretty good chance you're not a go-to person.
If I have to explain it to you, you're probably not the one. Let me get your reaction to something. There's a phrase that says, if you want to get something done, give it to a busy person. How you're familiar with that phrase, I'm sure.
Sure, of course.
Is there any sense in that, or how does that fit in with? Because while you're saying this, I'm thinking, I've always heard this. If you want to get, because I get that too. If you want to get something done, give it to a busy person. I tend to be that busy person. That's not always working.
Sure. I mean, the logic of that is that if somebody's busy, that means probably lots of people trust them to deliver, and that's why they keep going to them. So you don't want to go to a frantic person. You don't want to go to somebody who's busy but doesn't get stuff done. Right. You don't want to go to somebody who's always juggling. Anytime somebody tells me I'm always juggling, I'm always like, ooh, okay. Well, you know, if you're always juggling, you're going to drop the ball. Right.
Yeah, you're not delivering. You're not delivering.
Well, you might deliver some, but you're going to drop the ball. So you're going to be inconsistent. Right. Yeah. So yes, I think the logic of that is that if somebody's very busy, that means a lot of people trust them with their needs. Right. A lot of people trust them to deliver. Yeah. And so you know, they're getting lots of work. But what you really want to find out is somebody who's, you know, I always find these people who are super busy, but they don't get anything done. Mm-hmm. And what they become is roadblocks. They become bottlenecks, you know, and like often a senior executive will come to me and say, you know, everything is getting stopped up in blank department or blank team. Can you figure out what's going on there? You know, and often it's not like they're playing solitaire. They're busy. They're just not getting stuff done. So the busy is part of it, but it's, you know, you have to have a long to-do list and then execute. And my advice for that is, you know, yes, keep adding stuff to your to-do list, but be really clear. Okay, I'm going to get to this 2 weeks from Thursday. Yeah. Right. And you say that to your boss, say that to your internal customer, say, well, you know, and they say, well, why 2 weeks from Thursday? Well, if you want, I can tell you how my time is allocated. But when you tell somebody 2 weeks from Thursday, it tells them something about how you organize your time. Right. And then every day, you know, you got a busy schedule, look for the gaps in your schedule, then look at your to-do list and pluck out some items to make a do list. In the gaps in your schedule, you want a do list. Your do list is stuff you are going to do, execute, finish, complete in those gaps in your schedule. So, you know, as busy as your schedule might be, it's the gaps that are the golden moments. And then when you have limited time, people say, oh, there's 168 hours in a week. You can't make any more time, but you can.
You can.
You can manufacture time. And here's how: by making your time gaps, your schedule gaps into high leverage time. Use that time to avoid a problem. Use that time to avoid squandering resources. Use that time to get somebody else going. Use that time, put the bread in the oven before you make the salad, because it takes longer to bake the bread. So doing things in the right order,
right?
Doing things that will prevent problems down the road. And again, this is all back to basics. It's a stitch in time saves 9.
Right. Managing yourself on purpose.
On purpose. Yes.
On purpose.
Yes.
Being responsible for you on purpose. And I have students from time to time, they say, oh, I'm so busy, I can't get anything done. So we go through an exercise where you work out and you discover where are you spending your time every day throughout the week, and they find all this wasted time that they're still not getting anything done with. So managing your time on purpose and being responsible for your outcome. We have to do
absolutely.
that.
And again, the way to start getting ahead, I often say, well, get up an hour earlier, or, stay up an hour later, or just work, but at a certain point that maxes out. And so I use Covey's model. It sounds like maybe you use something similar, which is quadrant 4 time. Like, how much of your time are you wasting? You don't have time. You don't have time. You don't have time to waste.
Yeah.
And then how much are you putting time in quadrant 2? Very important things that are not urgent, that are going to save you time, build your productive capacity, sharpen the saw, practice fire prevention, work on your relationships, take a walk every day, you're going to live longer.
Yeah. You have to do certain things. You have to get enough rest. You have to take care of relationships. You have to get work done when you're working. And I've noticed, I agree with you that the COVID environment and working remote has caused some things to become very much more efficient because of that flexibility of time. We like that. But it's also caused folks to allow things to just kind of smear together, and they're not maybe managing as much as they could or should. Finally, Bruce, I want to ask you the big Rainmaker Thinking behind you there, which is awesome. Tell us about that, and then we'll wrap it up. What is Rainmaker Thinking? Because it sounds awesome. What is it?
Yeah, we've been in business since 1993. We're a research, consulting, and training firm. We've been doing research on the front lines of the workplace since 1993. We do in-depth interviews, and we do a lot of internal talent assessments and organizational assessments. So that's where a lot of our interviews come from. We've interviewed more than 500,000 people from more than 400 organizations over 27 years. Thousands and thousands of those interviews are longitudinal. They've gone on for 10 years or longer.
Oh my goodness.
And based on that in-depth interview research, that's our framework for everything. So that's how we organize our talent assessments and our organizational assessments. That's how we organize our consulting advice. That's how we organize our training. Basically, when the research bubbles up an issue, I write a book, and then we turn it into a training program, and it becomes a new consulting platform.
Okay, so let me get this straight. So you don't just make it up. These aren't just wild ass dreams, if you will. You actually use research to back up, right? Yeah. So there's real method to what you do. Now, Rainmaker, again, I'm going to go back to Rainmaker. Rainmaker, my understanding, is somebody who gets something done. They make it rain. They make it happen. Yeah.
So, of course, it comes, some people think it comes from Native American lore of, in a drought, they could do a rain dance and make it rain. Right. There's the droughts in American history, there were droughts where there were rainmakers who would go around in the Dust Bowl and promise to make it rain. There's a famous song about the rainmaker, step back non-believers, or the rain will never come. Right. Where I got it was, I was a lawyer in the early 90s on Wall Street, and I was very young, and I was teaching karate at the New York Sports Club. And I think the senior partners got the impression that I preferred to introduce them to my grown-up karate students who had important jobs in New York who might become clients of the law firm, that I'd rather do that than be a lawyer. And so they used to joke and poke at me and say, you want to be a rainmaker, not a lawyer. And in fact, while I was there, I started writing my first book, Managing Generation X. And I formed a company because one of the few things I learned how to do at the law firm was form a company, and I called it Rainmaker Information Analysis and Strategic Consulting. Then when they invented the internet, that didn't fit in a URL, so we made it
a little long.
Exactly.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. I love it. Well, Bruce, thank you so much for being with us. We're going to wrap it up here. Any final words of advice for our folks before we
go? I want to say ultimately what this book is about, a friend of mine and a client of mine, friend and client of mine, Greg Langell, who is Deputy Commanding General of U.S. Joint Special Operations Command, really cool guy. Just a brilliant guy and a great American hero. And he said, what this is really about is it's not practice being your best self. It's practice being the person you're trying to become. And so, I love that. And I say that to people, practice being the person you're trying to become.
Mm-hmm. Modeling. I love it. Well, thank you so much. All right, we're going to leave it here. Thanks for being with us. I'm Ernie Silvers, your host of The Silvers Connection. If you have a comment, please drop us a line at mba@csusb.edu. That's mba@csusb.edu. And Bruce, if folks want to get a hold of you, other than buy the book, I'll hold it up one more time. Repetition being the mother of skill and invention. Get that book, The Art of Being Indispensable. How do folks get a hold of you? Obviously, they can probably Google Rainmaker Thinking and come up with your website.
Or I'm just Bruce T at rainmakerthinking.com. I type faster than I talk. You send me an email, I will respond.
And that's how we do it. All right, that's it for today. Thanks for being here. We'll see you next time on Silvers Connection.
Thanks so much.